I'm so excited that we have Ben Cort back with us. I've lost track of how many times you've presented, Ben. It's been a few, quite a few. Next time you're in Pennsylvania, you got to let us know because I think it would be a great opportunity to bring people out in person. We've been trying to get more of that to happen. But I know we have a lot of people that love being at home and doing this with a lot less travel and all that. So really grateful to have you one way or another. I want to thank our community partner. This is from being brought to you by the Department of Drug and Alcohol Services of Chester County. So thank you so much to Chester County. They are a tremendous supporter and partner of ours, and we are really so happy that they wanted us to bring Ben back, and here he is. The follow-up page for tonight's program. So on our website, we have hundreds of pages, and one of them is called cannabis, and that is tonight's topic, obviously. And so you can visit this page to find the recording once that has been processed and posted. It takes us a day or two to do that. Also, you'll find loads and loads of resources, other recorded programs from the past that were on this topic. I'm continuing to add more and more topics. I was working on it today, trying to get it as pro as possible. And I want to tell you about a couple of programs tomorrow night. Actually, we had so many advanced questions about how do you talk to a young person, how do you talk to a young adult about cannabis, about their cannabis use. And we are going to have the woman who literally wrote the book, which is called How to Talk to Your Kids About Drugs and Alcohol. She's going to focus on cannabis. Her name is Dr. Sharon Levy. She is with She's the chief of the Division of Addiction Medicine at Boston Children's Hospital, and she's an associate professor in pediatrics at Harvard Medical School. So she'll be with us tomorrow night on Zoom. Judy Hirsch is my colleague. She's our director of of community engagement. She's going to be putting some of these links in the chat if she hasn't done so already. So that's tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And then on the 21st of May, we're going to talk about clearing the air. This is an in-person program in the Royersford community. That's the Springford area high school who's hosting us. So we're going to talk about not just cannabis, but vaping in general, also nicotine, which is extremely addictive substance. We also, boy, it's all about cannabis. We talk about a lot of other subjects, but cannabis is kind of very hot right now. And we just happened with timing to sort of pile on at this time of year for some reason, maybe in the wake of 420, which was just a few weeks ago. But we're going to talk about bridging the cannabis communication gap. So we've got certain generations who think, this is Cheech and Chong, it's no biggie. And then we have others who think the sky is falling and this is going to be the end of civilization as we know it. So somewhere in the middle is where we want to meet our kids. And so, and talk to the public about this in a very non-judgmental way, and talk to healthcare professionals and all of that. So we'll be talking about that on May 22nd. That will be on Zoom, and we'll be joined by Mallory Henry, who is the senior coordinator of student assistance programming at Caron Treatment Center. We also have a program for anybody who's looking for continuing education. If you're a social worker, psychologist, prevention provider, those folks who are looking for education about vicarious trauma. This is not necessarily related to cannabis. This is talking about vicarious trauma, something that a lot of behavioral health practitioners and peer support folks like I am, we all can experience some of this vicarious trauma. So we'll have Jessica Malavi with us, who is with Miramont Treatment Center. She's going to be speaking on May 31st. Just a note that that's 10 a.m. Eastern time. Oh, and by the way, the Bridging the Cannabis Communication Gap, that is at 11:30 a.m. Just wanted to make that note. We're trying a lunch and learn. We normally have our programs at this time of day, but we're going to try doing an evening or an afternoon program and see how that goes. Okay, you can find these programs and others on our calendar, conversation.zone/calendar. So registration for all of that is on that page. We have a YouTube channel with more than 140 recorded programs, and so you'll find this program there eventually, but we have lots and lots of other content. Invite you to visit that. We have parent partnership meetings. These are very similar to an Al-Anon, Nar-Anon support groups, but the difference is it's not a 12-step meeting. We love 12-step meetings, but this is a little different. We are all parents, grandparents, and guardians. You can find on that page that you see right there, conversation.zone/partnership. Here are the 21 meetings, 5 days a week, every week of the year. The buttons that are in purple take place in person, and the buttons that are in green take place on Zoom. So you can click on those buttons, get details about the meetings, and whether it's the location or the Zoom link or a person to contact, that sort of thing. We also, one last thing I want to tell you about is with this family recovery course that we have. By the way, all of this is totally free to attend. There's no charge. The family recovery course is a 3-part course. It is peer-led. It's capped at 12 individuals. This is for families, parents in particular, who recognize that their child does have a substance use disorder. The child could be any age, but this is not a prevention program. This is, we are dealing with substance use disorder. So we really help families to understand, kind of how they can heal as a family, find their own recovery, regardless of the path that our child takes. But it really does help us then to best support our child if they are struggling with substance use. Oh, and I do have one more thing. We have one opportunity every year to raise money for Be a Part of the Conversation. All these programs come to you at no charge. This is the one time that we charge for a ticket. So we hope that you might consider a sponsorship or going to your favorite lawyer or whoever it is and say, hey, why don't you sponsor this organization that helps out so many families? And so our brunch is coming up on Sunday, May 19th at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. This will be at the Farmhouse at People's Light in Malvern, Pennsylvania. So I hope you'll consider that. And maybe Judy will drop in conversation.zone/brunch. Sorry, Judy, I forgot to mention that one. Okay, I'm now very happy to finally introduce you to Ben Cort. Ben is the president and managing partner of NRT Behavioral Health. Ben has been sober since June 15, 1996, and has been a part of the recovery movement in almost every way imaginable, from a recipient to a provider to a spokesperson. He joined the field professionally in 2007, working inside of nonprofits, treatment programs, and consulting to athletics and organized labor. Highlighted in his book, Weed Incorporated, and his TED Talk, Surprising Truths About Legalizing Cannabis, Ben has remained active in the discussion around marijuana, assisting several states' efforts to hold back big marijuana, always advocating for recovery. Look who it is. It's Ben Cort. Yay.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Ben.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me back, Kim and Judy. I appreciate it. You guys are great, and it's always a lot of fun. And what a fantastic organization you've got. My hat's off to you guys again for what you're doing here. I put together a little bit of a different presentation tonight because I have been here several times with you before, and I'm certainly going to cover the basics, but I also want to discuss a little bit more about the solutions that we're seeing, because I was forwarded a list of questions that several of you submitted prior to this evening, and there was definitely a theme. The theme was, what do we do to help? How do we talk to a young person, a partner, a colleague? There was definitely a theme in the questions. And so I want to address those things with you right now. Recognizing, of course, that, and gosh, I didn't know you guys had Dr. Levy tomorrow. She's way better at this than I am and knows a lot more. So like anything that I say that she disagrees with, she's right. All right. Kim, can you see my screen? Did I do it?
Yes, you got it. Perfect.
Woohoo! So here's a little bit about me. Kim covered most of it in that, which I really appreciate. You never want to go on too much about this. The thing that I will call out to you or highlight to you is I do have another book coming out, I think next month with any luck. And Kim, I'm going to send you a copy because you got an honorable mention in it. And the work that you guys do there. It's a follow-up to the first book, which was 2017. And it's basically a state of things right now. And I want to, I'm not a good writer. I really am not. I try my best to convey a point through the book, and to make the conversation a little bit more nuanced. But I'm definitely no John Steinbeck. but that should be out next month. And I think since the last time I was here with you, there was a book that came out called Cannabis in Medicine, an Evidence-Based Approach. And that book, it's really important because it's doctors from every subspecialty of medicine writing about like the complexities of cannabis, like all of the different chemicals and interactions and things in their subspecialty, and not oversimplifying it. And so it's something for you medical professionals on. It's now required learning in med schools around the country, but it's also just a really great desk reference. And along with a very dear friend of mine, Dr. Letitia Bader, I wrote this section on treatment and recovery. And so I think to date, it's the only published best practice we have on treating cannabis use disorder. And so I'm going to share from that with you tonight, because the reality, everybody, is treating substance use disorder is treating substance use disorder. And most people who want to specify a specific substance in there are just trying to sell something. I work inside of treatment, and I know this well. However, there are idiosyncrasies that are specific to treating the cannabis addicted patient. In the same way that treating the amphetamine addicted patient is going to differ from the opiate addicted patient. So we really did try and give you like some specific best practices for this, and hopefully some of it helps. And there's a bunch of other stuff. The big two I'll call my main jobs are at Foundry Steamboat, which is now called NRT, because we're opening a larger program outside of Denver right now that's inpatient residential co-occurring mental health disorder treatment and substance use disorder treatment, which is my favorite thing in the world for any of you who actually know me to do that. And the other company, Union EAP, is something I started about a year ago to bring effective employee assistance programs to organized labor, because, well, so much of it is pretty ineffective. Okay, let's go. Let's just talk about what we're here to talk about. If anybody has seen me talk recently, and I guess by recently I mean like since I started talking about these things, I start all of these things with the same couple of slides, and I have to. So Kim, Judy, anybody else who's been on this, please feel free to zone out right now. You will get nothing from the next two. I do, however, have a little bit of new data to share with you coming up in the slide after that. The importance, and the reason why I've never strayed from doing this first, is we've got to recognize how different the products that are being consumed today are from the cannabis that so many of us knew in years past. It is not what you smoked in the 70s or the 80s, or in my example, even in the 90s. What is being consumed today is very, very different. And I actually spent the first chapter of the forthcoming book talking about how crucial I feel it is to change our vernacular around this, so that we stop saying things like cannabis, which include everything from, the CBD-based cream that's in your purse to high potency THC dabs. And by expanding our vocabulary, I think we can do a much better job really understanding this nuanced conversation. So we're not going to be talking about cannabis. We're going to be talking about THC. And THC, as I would assume just about all of you know, I probably shouldn't have said that, because any of you don't know now are going to feel stupid. Sorry. THC is the part that gets you high. If you don't have any THC in it, you've got hemp. No THC, no high. More THC, higher. So of all the 200 and some chemicals we got inside of the plant, this is the only one that's any fun. And it's the only one that gets you high at all. The problem is we ruined it, as I will demonstrate here, and as I like to tell my children. I'm sorry, you guys, we ruined drugs for you. You used to be able to kind of experiment and do things, and not so much anymore. We screwed it all up. So what we see here, and again, this will be review for any of you who've seen me talk, but it's very, very important information. what we see here is a data set out of Ole Miss, University of Mississippi, that beginning in 1960 gives us the average THC potency inside of confiscated marijuana from around the country. And there are so many things that we can glean from these data, but the only one I'm really going to focus on with us right now is the rise of THC potency. So if you see back in 1960 when this begins, and I've got a better graph I'll show you in just a moment here, we've got an average THC potency of 0.2, and I know saying average, you should always just leave it at that, but it's 0.2 to 0.5% depending on the geography here. And then weed starts to get stronger steadily. We have the introduction of cannabis indica into the United States, somewhere around here, which is what does this. Then we got better gardening, and then we've got some way better stuff coming up from south of the border. And the next thing, I guess speaking geologically or in a long term, weed gets to be a completely and totally different substance than it had been for the entirety of the human experience, for all of the human experience. And listen, man, like for those of you who absolutely loathe and hate cannabis and are, I'm sorry to frustrate you a little bit right now, but the simple reality is that humankind has interacted with the cannabis plant since we have recorded history. It has always been a part of the human experience. It's just been a part of the human experience in places where it would grow naturally. Tends to do really well in warm, humid climates. And, places like Colorado, we didn't have any weed growing here because we have a 4-month growing season. Just snowed over the weekend, like I was telling Kim. So what we've had with the cannabis plant has been a really benign substance that plant that we've interacted with. And if we were to follow this line back forever, because we found mummified examples of this plant, we follow it back 2,000 years is the first example we have of actually being able to test using mass spec mummified example of cannabis. It's always going to be less than 0.5% THC. And there were a couple of religious traditions around the world that might have spiked it as high as like some like really badass weed that would be like 4%, 5%, basically like, resin and things. But as a whole, the cannabis plant never had more than about 0.5% THC in it. And it wasn't until we got to about here, when it hit the double-digit mark, that the literature started to show some things that were of concern. And I know that there are people, and they're extremely well-informed people, who will disagree with me on this, and that's okay. So I do want you to hear loud and clear. I'm giving you some opinion on this one. The impacts of the cannabis plant on the human brain and body prior to it crossing that 10% threshold were very minimal. And while they certainly existed, and you can find examples of them, if you look at population level data, population health level data, it's pretty hard to make a case that it was something that was having a big negative effect on humankind. It absolutely would have negative effects on individuals. However, from a population data level, not so much. So here's the new chart, I promise, one of the couple that I'm going to show you. Here's a breakdown from 1960 to 1974. And you can see we go from an average of 0.2% to an average of 0.75%. If any of you follow along with the politics of this right now, what was an interesting day if you do. But before today, the definition of hemp in the United States since the 2018 Farm Bill is now 0.3% THC or less. So very literally, yesterday's weed is today's hemp. And this is where I draw the distinction, and you'll notice my vernacular change, between cannabis and high potency THC. So now here's the really fun chart. And Kim, I don't even think you've seen this. I've only been sharing this for about the last month or two because we just got these data. So now, beginning in 1960 and ending in 2020, because we are finally able to test some commercial products, which has been the federal government's a train wreck. Well, yeah, you all know that, but we haven't been able to test any of the products. So here's the line 1960 to 2020, where we end at about a 14% THC, which is statistically a concerning amount of THC. Again, as a general rule, which you can absolutely make sound arguments against, I just don't think on a large scale level, as a general rule, we don't really start to see issues until we get north of 10%. And again, let me clarify, that is not with the individual. There are exceptions to every large rule. That's population level data. We're already starting to bump into some trouble as you see this expanding. Now, what we have here, and this is the really exciting part, Kim and Judy, is we have data from Colorado that the Marijuana Enforcement Division was super psyched to give me in my Freedom of Information Act filings. Had to fight for this for 2 years. But the blue line is the average THC potency in the products sold in the state of Colorado. So let's be really, really clear, everybody. This plant that you're looking at in the green did very little damage to the human brain and body. This drug, however, is having absolutely terrible effects on the human brain and body and on a societal level, certainly inside of the treatment world. And it's really important to get into the why, because of what tonight's presentation is, because over in the next half hour or so, I hope to give you solutions for it. You got to understand how we ended up here. And this is something I just went really deep into in writing all of the books, so it's fairly fresh. The problem is one of messaging. And those of you in prevention or treatment, a lot of you will follow something called the Monitoring the Future survey, which we got about 60 years of, a little over 60 years of data that just kind of shows us trends in the way the kids think about substances, nicotine included, and even behaviors. And what we know for sure is that there has never been a period in recorded history in this country where there's been a lower perception of risk. Conversely, there has never been a version of this substance, this high potency THC, that has a higher actual risk. So if you see the dilemma that we've gotten ourselves into, we think that it's never been safer, when in actuality, it has never been more dangerous because of the potency levels and what we're using. So we got to go back and we got to do a little bit of a history lesson with a tiny bit of politics in it, so that we can work on the solution. So we made cannabis illegal in, any of you who pay attention to this thing deep know, in 1937 as part of the Tax Stamp Act. And we made cannabis illegal in 1937 because we are a country that is primarily concerned with the health and well-being of our citizens. We want to put them first and always do the next right thing when it comes to taking care of the populace. We absolutely believe in the sanctity of the human mind, or we did it because we're a bunch of racist assholes and we figured it was a really good way to lock more people up. I actually found a letter from one senator to another that said that by making cannabis illegal, it would get us better access to arrest inside of, and I quote, jazz clubs and barrios. Not being too subtle with this whole thing, are we? So cannabis was made illegal in 1937. Later that year, the film comes out that, Kat, if you haven't watched, I hope you go back and watch Reefer Madness at some point, because it's absolutely incredible, but it's propaganda journalism. And cannabis, or Reefer Madness, basically, there's several storylines, but the most compelling is one of this, upper middle class, really well-to-do, pretty white girl who goes out for the night and smokes weed. And the next thing you know, she's being sexually assaulted by a group of black men and she jumps out of a window to her death. Like, couldn't get a lot more dirtier in what they were doing. So here's the problem. And back to me talking solution with you this evening, is we oversold the risks associated with cannabis to the extreme. The pendulum, if you will, is here. Use the devil's lettuce. That's it. You're done. Not even once. Terrify the kids into abstinence. And what most people don't know about these campaigns, and where most people get this wrong, is they work. They actually work. You want to keep a kid from doing something, scare the ever living hell out of that kid. Tell them if you ever smoke weed, you're going to come home and both your parents are going to be dead on the floor and your dog's probably going to be eating them and you're going to be an orphan and nobody's ever going to love you again. Nobody's going to get high until one of them does. And then the one of them who gets high is going to be like, hey guys, guess what? I came home and my parents were totally cool. My dog was just eating his Alpo. There was nothing weird going on. Then the kids all start asking themselves, they're like, well, hang on, they tell us this is the worst thing in the world. My Uncle John smokes a ton of weed and he's totally my coolest uncle. In fact, I wouldn't know about Led Zeppelin if it wasn't for Uncle John. And so we start doing the math and we're like, they lied to us. So this is the problem with the extreme campaigns. Your more extreme just say no's and your things. They work for a short period of time. The pendulum, though, will swing back. And where we are right now is at the absolute other end of that, with never having a lower perceived risk. So what I would propose to you this evening is that sometime between 1937 and 2014, we have really missed the mark on the truth about what's happening inside of this plant. And I'm going to give you some ideas and some solutions to get away from it. If you can see this, the average product sold in the state of Colorado is 69% THC potency from the time I could get the last data, which was 2020. But maybe I'll be able to get more, who knows. I'm not making any friends at the state level right now. And once this book comes out, I don't think I'll have any friends in government left at all. What we're looking at here is very simply, for those of you not familiar with it, the diagnostic criteria for a substance use disorder. There are 11. If you meet 2 or 3 of them, it's mild. Okay, like most people call that college, like whatever, we're not too worried. If you meet 4 or 5, it's moderate. We're definitely paying attention. 6 and above, like myself and a lot of the loved ones in your world, severe. And we're taking very, very close attention. Now, because of the conversation that we're having tonight, I want to call out number 10 to you, which is in bold there, needing more of the substance to get the effect that you want, i.e. tolerance. Hang on to that because it's going to be really important in a minute. The next thing I want to show before I start getting into the solution with you is that the last version of the DSM, the manual that mental health professionals and physicians use to diagnose mental health conditions, included cannabis withdrawal. Physical withdrawal from cannabis. And the idea of physical withdrawal from cannabis a decade ago, laughable, asinine. One could develop a psychological dependence on it, and one did develop psychological dependences on it quite frequently. You couldn't get physically addicted to the cannabis plant. You never went through detox from the cannabis plant. You can simply pull ICD-10 codes to see the number of those, but we treat multiple cases of this weekly. And for those of you on the professional side, like I am, if you are not aggressively searching for and treating withdrawal from cannabis, I'd like to propose to you that I think it's a reason why a lot of our patients are leaving care. I am a completely and totally tobacco-free facility and everywhere that I am because the data is just inarguable with that. But if we don't fulfill people's immediate nicotine cravings, they're going to leave treatment. It's why we use nicotine replacement therapies, and we've got cessation programs in place for people. There's not a quicker way for somebody to leave a treatment facility or the care of a professional than for them to go through physical withdrawals. Because when you think about it, we're asking them to do like the hardest thing in the entire world. Like you got to give up your best friend, your God, your connection to the world, your everything. Your substance is what tethers you to everybody else. And then you throw in your body going into revolt over that, and your body screaming, I'm going to be very sick unless you put this in me. It just complicates it that much more. So cannabis withdrawal syndrome, CWS, please learn about it. So the 80-20 rule has always told us that about 80% of the booze in this country is consumed by about 20% of the consumers. In Colorado, the last good data that we have shows us that about 6% of the consumers consume about 3/4 of all of the THC products, or at least purchase all of the THC products. And that is very plain to see, as so many of us have been jumping up and down. And I know so many of your guests over the years, Kim, have said too, this is the problem with giving an addictive substance over to the private sector and to industry, who will use addiction to their benefit. It's addiction for profit. If 3/4 of all the money they made this year, which was over 3 billion, comes from 6% of the users, you had better believe that they are specifically targeting those users. They know who the people are, and they're going after them. This is not an industry that cares at all about the people who come to Colorado and buy a gummy on their way up to Breckenridge to go skiing. Like, you matters zero. What matters is the person who's consuming multiple times a day, and tolerance is the key to understanding that use. So you consider other substances that you can build tolerance to. And I go to pretty great lengths to try to make this point in the forthcoming book because of how important I think that it is. It's why the commercial markets are all ending in these extreme products, why you can't find a 20% plant if you look for it. And most of the products are 50% and above. It's because the people who the industry is most reliant on can build tolerance to perpetuity, forever. Since there's no lethal overdose associated with cannabis, and listen, again, that's a point that can be argued, but big scale, outside of infants and people with really pre-existing intense other conditions, you cannot die from overdose with THC. Now, listen, to be very clear, you die doing dumb things, and people die doing dumb things all the time. And when people are in state of acute intoxication or acute psychosis, their propensity to do dumb things goes way through the roof. So plenty of people die as a result of their consumption, but not necessarily because they have overdosed from it the same way you would an opiate. Now, let's take opiates. There comes a point in one's opiate consuming career where you build tolerance, build tolerance, and build tolerance, and then eventually your body's like, you know what? I'm absolutely tired of this. I'm finished. I'm going to take you down to 2 breaths per minute. We're going to slow your heart rate to 15 beats per minute, and then you're going to die. The same thing happens with amphetamines. You can build your tolerance and build your tolerance, and then at some point your body's going to be like, nope, not taking that anymore. I'm going to give you a heart attack. You can't build your tolerance any farther than this. Alcohol is easy. We just shut our liver down, and the tolerance arc with alcohol is interesting. It gets really, really high, and then when somebody's like bad end stage, they have no tolerance anymore because they can't process those toxins through. The problem that we have with THC that is specific, and with this industry that is specific to it, is our most hardened users, our most dedicated users, the people who have what we would classify as a severe substance use disorder, will continue to build that tolerance forever. It's why these commercial markets end in concentrates, distillates. It's why there's simply not a demand on a large scale level for less potent products. The people who are selling this know that the people who are their best consumers need very high potency, and they need that multiple times a day to simply maintain an equilibrium. Tolerance is really key with all of this. I have a nice little video. I'm not going to show it. I hope you guys all watch this at some point. I'll send it. Kim's got the slides. You can do whatever you want to with them. You all know that the 3 biggest factors that contribute to problems associated with this addiction and mental health are age of onset, frequency of use, and THC potency. I want to skip to the solution here, so I'm going to be very, very brief with this. Very simply put, the further one is from frontal lobe myelination, which is sometime in our mid-20s, the more extensive the damage. The farther one is from zero usage, the more extensive the damage. And the farther one is from 0% THC potency, the more extensive the damage and the risk. That really gets noticeable above 10%. That's where we're the most concerned over it. So now let's get to solution stuff. For those of you who work in treatment, in this world or have anything to do with it, and I'd like to ask you to pay special attention to this. I also believe that this will be applicable to the rest of you, maybe not the entirety of it, but certainly some of it. So there's something that happens inside of the treatment world and inside of the 12-step world, if you haven't experienced it, that is, it's disturbing. And I think a lot of us who've been around for a minute, we're always kind of trying to squish it, which is basically, you get a couple of addicts or a couple of alcoholics together, and typically we are going to go to that absolute lowest common denominator, tell a bunch of stories until we figure out which one of us was the biggest moron, who made the worst decisions, who did the dumbest stuff. It's like this race to the bottom. And that happens inside of treatment all the time. And unfortunately, what we do is we downplay the significance of those who are coming in and asking for help with a cannabis use disorder, for whose primary drug of choice or secondary even is THC. So these people come in, and if we're not careful as providers, a lot of the times they end up as kind of second-class addicts, which is terribly unfair. And I'll explain it in just a little bit more detail over the next couple of bullets. But one of the things that we do as people who are trying to help in this is I think we really contribute to this problem a lot by using microaggression. And if you're not familiar with that term, man, I think it's just one of the nastiest things out there, because it sort of seems like it's maybe a nice kind of whatever, but in the end, it like cuts deep and then twists the knife. Oh God, Kim, Kim, I'm so proud of you for starting this organization as a female to be able to get something going like this. It's just incredible. And he's so articulate for a Black man. Oh, he works so hard for a Latino. That kind of shit. We do the same thing a lot of the times with cannabis. So it's just weed. I got a friend, actually, the guy whose house I'm in right now, doing this presentation because I'm meeting my wife down here soon, who likes to say the three most dangerous words in the English language because of a family member situation he had where it's just weed. Or we say, so you don't actually do any like real drugs. It's weed. You think you're addicted to marijuana? Okay. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is, caring folks inside of this world, is consider any opportunity you have that might be a microaggression in this world. And we welcome these people absolutely with open arms in the same way we do anybody else who's trying to kick. Now, I'm going to expand on that in these next couple of bullet points. The second one is slowly being made obsolete, which I don't know is a good thing, but typically it takes a much longer period of time for somebody to see the negative effects in their life associated with their cannabis use. It's not the same with high potency THC. It's not like mom's got to hit you with Narcan at some point, and there's the great wake-up call for everybody. Usually this is something that goes on for years, and it's just kind of this like lack of ambition. Things didn't really turn out as well as they thought. Gee, I always thought she would have gone to college. I always kind of thought he would have done a little bit more with himself and didn't. So that leads to our downplay of the significance of this. The next thing is how hard motivation can be to find. And I think the primary reasons why motivation can be as hard to find as it is summarized well in these next two bullet points. The normalization of use inside of their peer groups and inside of the world now at large is changed, and it's different than anything else there is out there, and anything. The next book is called Weed Inked, which is a play on the first book called Weed Inc. But it's basically this idea that, I never met anybody who's got like a cocaine tattoo. I've never seen anybody wearing a meth hat or heroin socks. We downplay the significance of this so extensively because of how normalized its use is. And then get this, there's only one mood altering substance that's used more, and it's alcohol. And that's been very normalized. Like, listen, if I want to go to a baseball game in Colorado, I would go to Coors Field. Like, it's definitely been normalized. However, I don't think there's anybody in this country who would fight the fact that alcohol can be addictive, and alcohol can be even a life-ending problem that people have. We have that with cannabis, though. With THC, all the time. You have these peer groups that are built around it. Sometimes you have political identities that are built around it. You have people whose entire identity might be around their THC consumption. And so to challenge that is absolutely terrifying. They're not only going to lose the substance, they're probably going to lose the peer group that they've put together. Maybe it's their favorite music. Maybe, there's a whole genre of film called cannabis comedies. There are so many different components to this that make it hard for the person to ask for help, that I believe that by the time they finally do, they've waded through a lot more hard stuff than anybody else. Because look, man, if you got a friend who comes up to you and is like, hey, Ben, I need to quit shooting dope. Everybody's going to be like, yeah, obviously you need to quit shooting dope. It's time for me to give up the meth. We really agree it's time for you to give up the meth. Even your meth using friends are probably going to be like, you should probably stop using meth. I got to stop drinking so much. Yes, you have to stop drinking so much. I got to stop using so much weed. What? Because there's this absolute untruth out there, this lie that's been propagated by the people selling it that says that it's not addictive. It is objectively addictive, and it's impossible to argue that objectively. Anybody who argues it is doing so without any sort of basis or foundation in reality, because we use objective diagnostic criteria to diagnose a cannabis use disorder. The other thing that can get really tough is cultural considerations for this. Listen, I grew up in a world where it was just absolutely normal. I grew up on public assistance. I didn't know many people who looked like me. And I was in the DC metro area, and we smoked with people's grandmothers. I smoked with people's parents. It was the norm. It's what you did. And I think a lot of people who didn't grow up in environments like that, they're kind of like, well, of course they're going to have familial support. One of the things I do a bit on the side is I work with professional and collegiate athletes. And several years ago, I was working with a professional athlete, and we had a great connection. We had a similar story, and he was headed home for Christmas after about 3 months of sobriety. And we're talking, and he's like, hey man, I'm pretty nervous about this Christmas thing. And I was like, yeah, holidays suck. Like, families can be brutal. And he was like, well, no, haven't I ever told you about Cannabis Christmas? And cannabis was his drug of choice. And I said, no, you haven't. And he was like, well, grandma saves up for a couple of months, and she's got all the weed, and it's on her kitchen table. And he's like, I can like pretty much guarantee I won't see any of my cousins. And I can absolutely guarantee I won't see my grandma if I don't go to the house where everybody's smoking all the time. So there exists a normalization inside of peer groups that I hope, or I'm sorry, inside of different cultures that I hope some of us will remember when we're talking about this. The other thing that makes it really difficult is that detox is really tough. And oftentimes people cite the symptoms of detox as reasons why they consume. It's why we have to be much more familiar with cannabis withdrawal syndrome. People will say things like, I use cannabis to help me sleep. I use cannabis to keep my anxiety at bay. I use cannabis because it helps me eat. When what they don't realize is sleeplessness, aggression, and irritability and lack of appetite are all signs and symptoms of acute withdrawal from THC. So in a lot of the ways, it's the same thing as the alcoholic saying, I use alcoholic to treat my tremors. If you step back from it, you're like, well, okay, I mean, I guess I can sort of see that, because if you don't drink, you're going to get your tremors. The tough thing we've got to do with these folks is say, hey, man, yeah, your detox can be rough. And here's what it's going to look like. And we better know what it's going to look like, and maybe even have some ideas for treating it. There's all sorts of novel solutions, and there are 2 drugs in phase 2 trials right now. It's hard to predict how long that detox is going to last. We're going to go with probably about 2 weeks. And I can tell you that there will be a major resurgence of symptoms sometime around that 2-week mark, because the fat soluble nature actually releases it back into the bloodstream. So they go through a second cannabis withdrawal, if you will. And it's going to be a lot worse in women than in men. Skipping down, because I want to kind of keep going, is that we have to normalize sobriety when it comes to everyday activities, because it's very realistic to think that some of these folks have never been to a sporting event, never been to a concert, have not hung out socially, haven't listened to their favorite music in an extended period of time without being under the influence. A lot of people we work with have rituals around their THC consumption that help them eat. So we've got to be aware of these, and we really like to address them proactively. Another tricky thing is that the triggers for this exist absolutely everywhere. Alcohol to an extent, but like when I go out tonight to dinner with my wife and my youngest son, and people are having drinks around me, I'm not going to smell those drinks. Okay, or that's the strongest sense of memory. I don't know, whatever that we have, and it's different because they're going to smell cannabis. You're going to smell it growing, drying, and burning. The triggers exist everywhere. You can't turn on the news and not see pictures of it. Everybody's talking about this, and we address these proactively. The big thing I'm going to tell you on here that I have a lot of hope in is that Marijuana Anonymous is now online. And it used to be you had to be in a pretty major metropolitan area to go to an MA meeting, but they're online and they're great. I just cannot encourage you enough to try to get the cannabis dependent individual in your life to attend an MA meeting. A lot of the times for them, it's like a glass of water on a really hot day, because there's so many other people who know exactly what they're going through, and it's a great fellowship. Okay, I think, yeah, we won't have time for the argument, so in all likelihood, I'm going to end on this slide because this is pretty important stuff, and this is pulled. A bit of this is pulled right out of the new book. So I actually have a chapter written specifically to parents and loved ones. I also have a chapter written specifically to people who are struggling with their use. I was hoping to have it on perforated paper so you could tear it out and give it to the individual, but they won't do that. And then I have one for healthcare professionals, but this is from the one, a lot of this is from the one for parents, family members, people who have a concern for somebody in your life. So first and foremost, the conversation that we're going to have has 3 parts in it. And this conversation needs to take place at the right time. We do not have this conversation in crisis. We do not have this conversation when we are filled with anger and rage, which I'm a parent. The kid comes home late. The kid staggers in. The kid has just made a terrible decision. You just saw some post on social media. You're pissed. Now's not the time to sit them down and talk to them about their use, because what they're going to see from you is pissed, not love. And they have plenty of reason already to doubt what it is we're going to say. We don't want to add to that. So these conversations are had at the good times. We set them up. Whether or not they know that it's set up is less of a thing for me. That's more your style. I always encourage people to do a favorite meal. Go out somewhere you really like, cook something that you really like, sit down, and at the end of it, this is when we have the conversation. And again, I think you're going to get much better information on this tomorrow night. So anything she disagrees with, I'm wrong. 3 phases for what I wrote. The first one is gather information. So in the information gathering part, what we are trying to determine here really is, I mean, pretty simply put, frequency, potency, and method of ingestion. And you're going to want to probe on this. Sorry, my slide screwed up. I just did it today. You're going to have to probe, because you're going to talk about method of ingestion. They're going to be like, yeah, every now and again, well, just that time I got caught when you, and that's not the answer. We actually need to try to figure out how much they're consuming, because remember, the 3 big things we're looking for: the farther we are from 0 times and 0 potency, and the earlier in life, the higher our concern level. So our information gathering stage really needs to be much more conversational. And it's at this point that I would encourage you to actually know some of the words that they're going to use. We changed all the intakes in our programs because we don't ask, like, how much do you smoke? It's when we say, we don't ask if you use weed, we say, do you consume THC? And if the answer is yes, then we say, what's your preferred method of consumption? And okay, well, I vape it. We know if they vape it, it's absolutely going to be a form of concentrate. If it's all edibles, there's a little bit different indication right there. You're typically not going to see somebody who's got a substance use disorder who's all edibles, or if they smoke it, then we can go from there, and then we can start talking potency. My secret question for this, well, that's not a secret question at all. My question for this that I ask, that I'm telling you right now, is, okay, so if I give you $1,000 gift certificate to your favorite dispensary, what are you walking out with? And if they say, some bud and maybe some cartridges, and we got to keep going. Okay, like which bud? What's the strain? What do you love the most? Oh, I'm a OG Diesel guy. What is OG Diesel's THC potency right now? We got to actually know a little bit about what we're talking about so that we can push for and get answers, because the biggest thing we're trying to figure out is how serious this is right now. How much are you consuming, and how strong is what you're consuming? The next step that we have is to express compassionate concern. And listen, I think some of you have been around the block, or like whatever, this would be an easy one to kind of laugh off and be like, oh, that's great, alliteration, whatever, who cares? This is absolutely crucial. I mean, personal experience, being on both sides of this conversation now, I can tell you that there is a big difference between coming at your kid and saying, seriously, this is how I raised you? You think the baker's kids are doing this, and the baker's kids, they're going places. You're going to embarrass your mother and I in front of absolutely everybody. Now, this is what your life is. There's a big difference between that and, sweetie, I really love you. And I mean that. And I hope over the years I've been able to show you that more than anything else. I love you. And I want what's best for you. I don't want to control your life. I don't want to try and make you into a little mini me. I am not trying to engineer your existence. I'm trying to see you have as little pain as you can in your life, because I love you. There's a big difference between the two. And when we express that compassion and concern, I think a lot of times we'll win them over. So here are the solutions and next steps, which is sort of phase 3 to this conversation. And they are in this order, from least severe to most severe. We can agree to another conversation. If you determine, hey, heck, maybe I was overreacting a little bit, and this isn't that terrible. They're smoking weed once a month. Okay. Can we pick this up in a couple of weeks? I'd love to have this conversation with you again. We can agree to boundaries. I understand that you're telling me that this is your medicine. I understand that you're saying that it's not a problem. It's never going to be a problem. You can't use it in my house. And if you use it outside of my house, I'm not okay with you being intoxicated here. I'm not okay with any of that substance being in my house, especially for a minor, because it's illegal for you. And so I'm not going to be around you when you're using, and I'm not going to allow it in my house. There's some nice boundaries there. I'm going to agree with you that you're going to be able to stop for a couple of weeks. And if you can't stop for those couple of weeks, we're going to have to take this to another place, okay? Boundaries. We agree to them first when we're in a good place. The next thing that we can do, and what I'd always love to see, is let's agree to stop all use. If we can walk away from that conversation with the individual saying, you're right, Dad. I don't know, man. I don't know. Can we go fishing? It's not crazy. It happens. It happened a little recently to me. That's cool if they'll agree to stop. The other thing we'll go to from there is let's get a professional involved. So this is where I'll throw in, and even, doing the work I do, I'll be like, whoa, this one's past my pay grade. We need a therapist. This one's past my pay grade. We need a doctor. We need a psychiatrist. Not that psychiatrists aren't doctors, but we need a professional here. Can we call somebody in? Then the next thing we'll suggest after that is your IOP, your intensive outpatient. Residential, if it's that serious. If they need residential, we want to get them in there right away. Addiction is a pediatric onset disease, and we do not need to wait for it to get terrible. Let's get them help as soon as we possibly can. And then your last one, and this is going to typically apply to people who are having acute psychotic episodes, because the psychosis is so prevalent with this, sometimes we just need to get them into acute emergency care. And that's very simple. It's the emergency department. We got the data last year from Colorado, and we know that the average Colorado emergency department sees 30 cases of cannabis-induced psychosis every day in a 24-hour period. So the good news about this right now is you're not going to walk into an ER and no docs are going to know what's going on. If it's manifesting like psychosis, which is just some sort of crazy, let's just go with that, some sort of crazy, and you can't keep them immediately safe, let's get them to an ER and let's trust the professionals there who are going to help. Here's a couple of suggestions I have on this one, as well as all of them, is do not argue every single point. And I'm almost done. I see the time. I'm going to do this one and the very last one. Don't argue every single point, but you got to hold your ground on the important stuff. That means when somebody says something to me like, well, Ben, I don't understand what the big deal is. Like, these laws all just came about because a bunch of racist guys back in the 30s were like, yeah, no, totally. That sucks. And like, but what I want to talk about is why you're using like 5 times a day. Ben, don't you know that George Washington and Thomas Jefferson blazed a blunt on the porch of Monticello every single night before they went? Well, no kidding. They did. That's something else. The thing that's kind of tripping me out though, man, is you're telling me you feel crazy every time you smoke, but you keep smoking. We don't, to choose our arguments doesn't mean that we crawdad. It doesn't mean we turtle back into these things. We're like, oh God, I can't have this conversation. You can absolutely have the conversation. Just stick with the important stuff. And the important stuff typically is their addictive use, their mental health, their future, that kind of thing. I want to go to the last one because this is dramatically under-discussed. And that is the mental health of those of you who are having these conversations. If any of you, heaven forbid, ever end up on the telephone with me because we're helping someone you love get into treatment, which I'm always happy to do, it's a 12-step thing for me. You'll know that we always end the phone call with figuring out what you are going to do next. Because as many of you know, especially the parents out there, people who have loved ones who have addictive disorders, they're the focus of everything. They're the center of the world. They're everybody's world. I mean, they've probably been the center of your world, depending on how codependent you are, for a very long period of time. And when you start taking these steps, whether it's that initial conversation or it's actually putting a kid in treatment, which is a very difficult thing to do. No matter how excited you can be, it's a very hard thing to do. You need to be ready to have some support. Because what's going to happen is you're going to either have the conversation or you're going to drop the kid off and you're going to step away from it. And you're going to be like, now what? Now comes breakdown. Now comes mom needs to drink a bottle of wine to be cool. Now comes, where do I put all of this energy that I have shoved into trying to fix everyone around me? You're not going to be cool. And the closer you are to this person, the harder it is. If, you know, when I have conversations with people who are like, hey, will you talk to my buddy? That doesn't mess with me. When I have conversations with family, it's different. So you have real resources. We all have different resources, but you need to get ready to use them if you're going to have one of these conversations. Friends and family, don't go this stuff alone. There are healthy and unhealthy people in your family. I'm guessing, if it's anything like my family. Let's try to find the healthy ones and let's let people know what's happening. Not so, and I'm not talking about breaking the confidence of your loved one or anything like that. This is about you at this point. And I want to make sure that you have a plan with people who care about you, that you're going to be okay on the back end of it. There's not a single person who is dealing with somebody who's in addiction who wouldn't benefit from some professional help. I don't think I've ever said that sentence. And as I'm saying it, it's, I feel very confident in that, but I will, I'll think about it more, but I'm telling you, man, none of you who have dealt with somebody in your immediate orbit with addiction wouldn't benefit from some professional help. Talk to somebody. There are great support groups. We are in one right now, literally. There is Al-Anon. There's a really cool program called Mar-Anon, which is marijuana specific for people who need that. Your local faith-based community will have support groups. There's a dear woman out of Virginia named Sarah McDade who runs a nationwide support group for these things. There are some great support groups that you can get involved in. And here are my last two pieces of advice before we turn it over to questions. Stay cool and stay pragmatic. If you feel yourself heating up, and if you're getting pissed, if the emotions are starting to overtake the logic, we need to hit pause. And the nice thing about these conversations is we absolutely can. And again, in my own personal life, I have said, I'm sorry. I know this is really important. I need 15 minutes. My go-to intervention when I get too amped up is I do push-ups until I can't do them anymore. So I'll just go in the other room and do those. Do something. Get your heart going. Do some sort of basic grounding techniques. Take a piece of ice and put it in your hand and wait until it melts. Do some bilateral stimulation. Whatever it is, chill out. Because we don't want to be having these conversations when we're hot. The other thing is we got to stay extremely pragmatic. Same thing. If any of you are ever unfortunate enough to work with me through one of these, you know that a lot of times you have parents who are like, and then, well, and how will we get him back to college? Oh God, we're in college. We're trying to figure out how you're going to have this conversation. A, and then B is we're trying to get him the help that he needs. Like we are not looking a month down the road. Honestly, guys, we're not even looking a week down the road. You got to stay pragmatic and you got to stay in the moment. What is it that I am trying to achieve right now? Which of those solutions, next steps, is it that we are trying to achieve right now? And then let's let the future take care of the future. Not to say that we won't plan for it, we won't do these things, we won't make great plans around them, but you got to stay pragmatic and do not try to get to step 5 before you've done step 1. So those are my main pieces of advice for you. I'm going to stop sharing and turn this over to questions.
I'm so grateful to for everything you just said. It was the best ever. And the last piece of it is my personal favorite because not nearly enough people who work in the treatment field recognize the plight of the family member and the importance of the family member to get healthy so that they can appropriately support their loved one. And so thank you for that. That is the reason we exist, honestly. And I wanted to ask before we get to some questions, and I hope you'll all start putting your questions in the chat or start raising your hand. Use that raised hand feature, please. You talked about we need a professional like that. That's that important piece for the family members to say, like, this is outside my wheelhouse. Even if I'm a treatment professional, even if I understand this and I have all kinds of degrees after my name, I'm mom and dad number one, right? That is primary, and that usurps my my thinking brain, and I get hijacked by my fear, right? That was certainly my situation. I've shared this many times. When my son who found he entered recovery in 2010, and it was what we knew was cannabis. What we learned subsequently was a whole lot more stuff, but we took him to see a professional. However, I wasn't ready to look for an addiction professional. Please, even if it's a psychiatrist, because what she said after meeting with our son, and he said, sure, you can talk to my mom and dad, bring them on in. And she said, come on, didn't you guys get high in college? We took him to the wrong professional. She was great she was a mood and anxiety disorder specialist. I've had coffee with her since and brought her up to speed on where things are, not in a chastising way, but she's learned a lot since then. And, we really need to recognize that this could be substance use disorder. Why would we not take our child to a specialist or any other condition that they have to rule out the worst case scenario? So just a little caveat there. Please don't be afraid to look for that specialty, that subspecialty.
We always encourage ASAM or ABAM certified when it comes to physicians, American Society of Addiction Medicine or American Board of Addiction Medicine. And yeah, with your therapist, find somebody who's specializes in addiction for sure, please. Great advice.
Okay. Oh, here's the question we thought would come up. All right. So, Biden announced today he's reducing restrictions on marijuana. Your thoughts? The floor is yours.
I hate politics. This was a decision. I've been on some boards I'm on and some things. The people who are the most upset about this today are the physicians. Because the consensus is that this is absolutely a political decision, not a scientific decision. I think that there's some opportunity for good with it because they don't really understand what they're doing all the way in the rescheduling. There's no way FDA is going to be able to continue to avoid getting involved if it's a Schedule 3. It also, while one of the downsides is it's going to open these corporate powers that be to much, much more financing and banking, et cetera, it's also going to open them much more to tort. And much like the tobacco industry, the big turning point that we saw with them was when they got their pantsuit off. I think that for me, one of the most frustrating things in my life is the hijacking of public health by politics. And I think that we had public health again hijacked by politics.
Thanks, Mark. Do you have a go-to answer for how bad can it be if it's been decriminalized or legalized that doesn't use alcohol as a comparison?
Yeah, totally. How about opiates? I love the comparisons. I love the alcohol comparison. I love the opiate comparison, and I'll dig into this one with people. So I'm saying, yeah. So who legalized it? And they'll say, well, I don't know, the government. And it's typically not the government. It's usually states. But my next question there is very simple and a little bit on the brutal side. So the government always nails it. We feel comfortable with these guys getting it right. Like I'm almost certain they couldn't decide on what day of the week it is in Washington right now. And so this is something, especially with young people, I push back on and I say, oh God, so you are completely comfortable with the government being the ones who decide what's a good idea and a bad idea. And this seems to work really well with young people. I'll remind them of the corporate interests behind. So listen, man, so the stuff doesn't get done. Laws don't get made because they're looking to try and do something good. Laws get made because a lobbyist buys enough good steak dinners and puts enough campaign contributions into the right places. This was a result of the industry trying to do this. That's it. I am looking at the chats and I'm saying, my old friend, we have to talk soon because I've got to know where you guys are with this. I continue to talk about this all the time, and I have spent more time the last year or so just talking about cannabis withdrawal than anything else. I've tried to speak less and show up at home more, but talking about cannabis withdrawal syndrome is something that'll get me on a plane anytime. The question that they asked, for those of you not reading it, is what do I say to people who say cannabis withdrawal is not important? That lacks a fundamental understanding of what addiction is at its core. So these are the same people who would say it's addiction, but it's just addiction to weed. Okay, like there's never any just before the word addiction. Just rots our souls. It destroys families. It guts communities. There's no just before addiction ever, if it's actually addiction. So what I say to people is when they say it's not important, as cannabis withdrawal important, I like to remind them that we are fighting against, as I said in the presentation, we are fighting against that person's mind that is in full revolt, telling them this substance is their God, their lover, their all in all. The last thing I want to do is also fight against their body. And fortunately, we've learned so much more in recent years on how to help people avoid withdrawal in the immediate period that they gain abstinence, so that we can start to get through to that frontal lobe a little bit.
You didn't talk a whole lot about hyperemesis syndrome and psychosis, and there was an advanced question about, are we now seeing data, and I believe, yes, we are, that it's not just correlation, but it is in fact causation for cannabis-induced psychosis. Could you say just a little bit about that in hyperemesis? We hear so much about hyperemesis from families.
So causality has been established. And again, there's a big difference between when something goes from scientific understanding and fact, like there's the, hey, we sort of think, and it's kind of looking this direction, and now we can say this for sure. There's a big difference between when we can say for sure and when the general public understands it. I actually kind of get into this in the book a little bit with the first, the first Surgeon General's warning on tobacco took place in, if I recall, 1917. It was sometime in the very early 1900s, and it wasn't until the one in the 50s that people actually started to pay attention to it. So there's a long period between science knowing something and the general public knowing something. Science knows that high potency THC is causal for psychosis, and there's no getting around that. We think that we'll be able to establish without any sort of refute causal for schizophrenia. Right now, what they've proven is that it is dose respondent, which is a pretty big deal for those of you playing along at home. So I believe that the reckoning for the cannabis industry is going to be around mental health. And I've said this before, I'm saying it again really loud in this book, that the thing that brought change about in tobacco was when we all finally accepted not just the addictive part, that was big, but the irrefutable link to cancer. And I think that as society is able to understand the irrefutable link of high potency THC to mental health, that's when I think we'll see the same thing. As far as hyperemesis goes, and for those of you who are just kind of hearing the big words and being that it's the cyclic vomiting, it's when somebody can't stop. The biggest concern that we see with cannabis-induced hyperemesis is there certainly are fatalities associated with it because of dehydration. And so it's something that we have a different detox protocol for now. If somebody's got a history of that, we'd like to keep them in an advanced medical setting for 3 or 4 days to make sure the hyperemesis won't stop. We know that the only way to stop cannabis-induced hyperemesis is to stop the consumption. We also know that it's going to get worse before it gets better. You're going to have a couple of days of it being really rough when you do stop.
Okay, yeah. Are there any studies that compare the cannabis usage in states where it is legal versus illegal? And what about states where medical marijuana is available? And just a quick note, PA, we have had medical marijuana legalized for 6 or 7 years now. And then there's legislation that's been all over the place for adult use, not there yet. And by the way, number one condition in Pennsylvania for getting a medical marijuana card is anxiety. Number 2 is intractable pain, and third is PTSD. And then there are a total of 24 conditions, but those are the top 3. Big number 1 is anxiety.
Which is actually contraindicated for
absolutely 100%. Yes.
This is the problem with letting people vote on medicine. Quite a few studies on this absolutely showing it. The 2 places that I always direct people for sort of like the best repository of science is ISAC, which is the International Academy of Science and Impact of Cannabis. It is IASIC, the number 1.org. And if you go to their library, they've got everything really nicely cataloged. They'll give a summary of the study and then a direct link to it so you can go. The other one is SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, and that's learnaboutsam.org.
All right, you want to go to the next one? My 19-year-old son came away from inpatient rehab for THC and alcohol with a nicotine addiction because the other clients there gave it to him to deal with withdrawal symptoms. Now he's fighting all 3 addictions. Do I even worry about the vaping of nicotine at this point? Such a good question.
the specifics of your situation are nuanced. And so I want to say that before I give you kind of the big data for it. I don't know which one of these you want to deal with first. There was this old saying in the 12-step world, where I got sober in a world of smoking meetings. And if you couldn't smoke in the meeting, we had what we called halftime, where we would take a break in the middle so we could all go out and smoke. There's this old saying that said you want to quit your addictions in the order that they're killing you. But then what we realize is it's actually killing a whole lot of people. And then more than that, there's just a brilliant physician named Libby Stout, who, Kim, if you haven't had her, you got to have Libby on here.
Coming June 8th. I'll tell you about that in a second. Go ahead.
Libby's the best, fellow Coloradan. When I first got into this field, we started a nonprofit, and my partner in it, my climbing partner, said, "Hey, we need to be tobacco free." And I was like, "You kidding? Nobody will ever come. Like, we can't be tobacco free." And then I went to one of Libby's presentations, and it's inarguable. In fact, when I visit treatment centers for different places I work or whatever, any of them that still allow tobacco consumption, I will I'll give a portfolio of work on it, because your odds increase, your ability to maintain sobriety increases by about 30% if we're able to remove the tobacco and then ultimately the nicotine at the very beginning of it. So my challenge to other treatment providers here, and I'm sorry, I really do try not to be too inflammatory and piss too many people off. But if you're a treatment provider and you're still allowing people to use tobacco or vape inside of your process, you need to read more. It's that simple. We should absolutely not be allowing this to happen inside of inpatient, because the story that you just told. There are too many times when this happens. One, we trade one addiction for another, and two, it actually makes it much harder to quit the substances in question. So now back to the caveat at the beginning. I don't know the situation with your son, and I would probably want to have him stop the substances that have immediate lethality associated in mental illness before the other one. But he really, if he ends up in a program again, please make sure it's one that's tobacco free. Are you seeing that people in ERs are doing a poor job of a history around psychosis of their cannabis use? And I mean, that's an emphatic yes. It is so frustrating to hear these stories of people. In fact, I had a conversation with a mother. I have a severely autistic child, and so we are in some of the autism circles. And with a mother whose autistic child was in the ER, and it was all cannabis-induced psychosis, and he wouldn't, even when mom brought it up, the physician wouldn't consider. So yeah, one of the really important things that we can do when it comes to taking a good patient history, again, for you professionals out there, is please dig deep into a history of use. And we always want to get a history of all substance use, but especially when we're dealing with somebody who's got psychosis or other forms of mental illness, probe that THC consumption. Yeah, great question, Jim.
What are the indications that someone is addicted to weed?
I'll kind of come back to that, the diagnostic criteria, the 11 of them, and 2 or 3 mild, 4 or 5 moderate, 6 and above severe. So just go straight to those. But I think, and if I have my way in the next DSM, some of them might be weighted. I think that there are some things that can trump it, like a person who has multiple attempts to stop and can't. That's the easiest one. And it seems like the easiest one to discuss with people for them to actually see it. It's just so simple to say, well, okay, like you have tried multiple times to quit doing this or to cut down and you can't. That's a really, really good one.
Yep. Someone asked ahead of time, why are there laws to prevent driving under the influence of alcohol, but not marijuana? There are laws against driving under the influence of marijuana.
Yeah, they're just really rough. And I mean, I usually, most of the people who are interested in this are employers and things. I I need 60 minutes, usually 90, to really unpack that one. But what I can tell you is there's no 0.08 is the very easy way to say it. And while several states have implemented like a parts per mil, nanograms per milliliter inside of blood, that is an extremely imperfect science. And because there's no per se at a 0.08, all you need to do is get a jury trial and convince one of them that you weren't intoxicated, no matter what your blood level was. And so what happens, again, nature of politics, is district attorneys, prosecutors, they make their careers and take their next steps based on wins versus losses. I mean, that's how they're all weighed. And so what most of my friends in law enforcement tell me very regularly, with very few exceptions, I just met one in Billings, Montana. They say our DA doesn't want to see anything that is driving under the influence of cannabis because they're not going to get a prosecute, or they're not going to get a conviction. So they're going to spend all this time, waste all this effort doing it, and then not only will they have wasted that time, but they're going to have a loss on the record. Any chance of accountability for dispensaries, the way bars can be held liable for DUI? I have a section in the forthcoming book that's to the federal government. I try and use really little words so that all those morons can understand them. And basically what I come back to is this idea that we have RFID tracking and a genetic understanding of everything that's grown. So in theory, especially with what the industry has sold us, in theory, we could track back every single product to not only the grower, but to the seller of that product. And so what I say as we're moving towards this is let's look at holding them accountable for both DUIs as well as youth use. Yes, you bet we could do that. Is there the political willpower for it? I think not, but we could.
Here's another really good one. What are important points to get across about when creating public health campaigns regarding cannabis?
Awesome question. I am going to punt to Kim because I know she has so much good data on that. There's a program out of Wyoming called There Is No Debate. Fantastic, run by a woman named Rhea Parsons. And what I would encourage you to before anything, Justin, is don't reinvent the wheel. Find good stuff that people have done. For me, the most important point that I'm always trying to bring up and hit home with people is the mental health issues associated with it. But I'm certain Kim could get you a plethora of resources for that.
No, I don't know about a plethora. It's challenging. It's really, to me, it's meet them where they are. If we, as I said earlier, we're trying to demonize it. We got to find the middle ground because we'll burn bridges. That's why we have that program coming up, bridging the cannabis communication gap, because it's so divisive. It's either it's the best thing that's since sliced bread or it's going to kill you. We got to find a place to meet people where they are, and not scare people. I was a little nervous, Ben, when you're saying like you can absolutely scare kids, because there's like a lot of evidence that scare tactics don't work. So I'm glad that you follow that up with and it doesn't actually work. Like not ultimately, because
they work for a minute.
It works for a minute. It works for the kid that's not going to do it anyway. The crashed car during prom season is not going to stop the person. It's probably going to encourage the drinking because they were in an accident. They're now triggered. They need to go drink because they, saw this horrible car accident again, So there are lots of ways that we know that we can't scare people, and certainly not young people. They don't want to know about what's going to happen to their lungs or brain 10 years down the road. It feels good today, and I got a lot of stress and anxiety, and it feels good right now. So let's acknowledge that. I love motivational interviewing. If we could find a way to use that in public health campaigns, to say, to lean into it. We get that you're looking for solutions for all the stress in your life, for all the anxiety that teens, my God, is anybody reading Jonathan Haidt? I'm obsessed with the Anxious Generation, the new book. I mean, it's fantastic. So we have to realize that our kids are very different than we were. This is not our weed, and this is not us as kids. They're in a different place. And so of course they're looking for ways to feel better. Of course we want to believe this is harmless, and the billboards for the dispensaries looks like a spa, so why would we not consume? It's so totally culturally validated. And so we do have to find a way to not be snarky and the sky is falling. Do you see benefit or even possibility of dispensaries becoming recovery-friendly workplaces?
No, to the
Mm.
benefit.
Mm-mm.
Possibility, I wouldn't put anything past people, but no benefit. I'll just leave it that simple and tell you that I got really, really, really good reasons and science behind me saying it. No.
Thank you, everybody, so much for being here. It was really a great conversation. You are the best.